What would you tell someone who says it's impossible to shoot a feature film in 5 days?
I would say that's not entirely accurate. A feature film runs 90 minutes. So you could put a camera on your cat on the table for 90 minutes, boom, you got yourself a feature film. That's all it took, 90 minutes. So technically that is true, that you can make a feature film in under 5 days.
Now, with your film, your documentary, how many days of shooting?
The total shooting days of ours was 7 days. We shot a 4-day event. So we had camera teams running around for 4 days, and then we did 3 days of interviews, about 16 hours of interviews.
And were these spontaneous interviews, or did you let the people know ahead of time that you would be meeting with them?
No, they were not spontaneous. They were set up interviews. We actually did, for our documentary, we did everyone's interviews before the convention happened, except for the one main owner. And so then we shot the 4 days of the convention, and then we did his interview after to help recap some of the crazy events that had happened.
And was any of this scripted? Did you have a 3-act structure for your documentary?
Not at all. It was definitely trial by fire, I think. But I got called in by the owners of the convention. We were old friends, and they called me down to help, try to do this documentary on what they thought would be their last major Supercon event. And so I knew kind of how I wanted to do it. I wanted to play off them showing a behind the scenes only focus on the documentary, because I already had a couple Comic-Con documentaries that showed it from the fans' perspective or from a different angle, but no one's ever really shown it just from behind the scenes. And so we knew we only had to shoot for 4 days because it was only a 4-day event, but we ran around for 18 to 20 hours a day with a different camera team attached to each person that was running the show. And so, yeah, I mean, that was 7 days, which we could have done it in less, but we did a second round of interviews that we added another day for some extraneous interviews.
And how did you deal with crowd control and their reaction to the camera?
Well, luckily at conventions, when you enter the premises, there's giant signs saying that we have the ability to videotape and photograph you here for multiple purposes. So they didn't really have any say in that. And the building knew we were doing a documentary. The police department knew we were doing a documentary. Some of the celebrities, I think, knew. And so it wasn't a secret to anyone. And so we didn't really have any issues with that. And then everything we covered was truth. I mean, the entire movie is a fly-on-the-wall experience. We didn't set up anything. We didn't organize any scenes. We literally just ran around and followed the action and then cut out all the boring parts because there's a lot of action that happens. So it was pretty easy to build a story off of.
How did you know there was going to be enough story to make a film?
I guess starting out, you never really know how big your story is going to be or what's going to be more of the focus. I had a general idea that whatever we didn't need of show footage, we have interviews to help out. So I had a good idea that we would have 90 minutes worth of content. I didn't know exactly how exciting it would be or what would happen until the actual show started happening. And then each day when we would find a new storyline, we would jot down notes. My main camera operator, Chris McDaniel, had DP'd a bunch of reality shows. So he had some good notes for us on, okay, if you catch something but you don't catch it verbally, just ask them to repeat what just happened. Grab a shot of this, grab a shot of that. And so between the 4 teams, we covered almost everything pretty well, including some things with 4 angles, which was really neat to see all different sides of some of the stories. But yeah, I never really worried about having enough content. And I knew I wanted to focus on building the storylines of these 3 main people because we were telling their story on how they built the show. We start from them being born all the way through what they built up after 12 years of this convention, which was this major 60,000 person event. And so you knew these characters before the show even started. So when you see them go through all of these hoops and hurdles, you're feeling a lot more for them, hopefully, because you know them now a lot better, as opposed to just, that guy's doing this. So you get to see their whole upbringing and kind of grow to like them a little bit more, I think.
Who are the 3 people in the film?
So the documentary follows the 2 owners, husband and wife team of Michael Broder and Sandy Martin, and then Josh Catrone is their head of operations. And so these are the 3 main people we follow throughout the documentary. The husband and wife team that started the show, and then Josh is running around. All 3 of them run around constantly putting out different fires all over the massive convention center.
Was there footage that you felt you shouldn't include? That you don't have to tell me what it was, but for whatever reason it was cut because you didn't have someone's approval or...
No, there was one storyline that we didn't have enough footage for that we probably could have used, but we made a deal with the police department pretty quickly over what we were allowed to shoot and what we were not allowed to shoot, such as if someone gets arrested and we videotape the arrest, that turns into evidence. They have to confiscate our footage and cameras, which we didn't want to have happen. So things like that, but we didn't need it. We built up the storylines up into the arresting point and you just didn't see the person go into the police car. It's pretty simple. All of the storylines that we cut were just not as exciting. I had probably over an hour of footage of parking problems. Easily could have done a whole movie on parking problems, but it's not nearly as exciting as a fire alarm going off or someone getting arrested or an ambulance taking somebody away. So yeah, I'm not a big documentarian and I'm not a big documentary fan, really. So for me, I kind of put it together as entertaining as possible and as fast-paced as possible because that's the kind of movie I would want to watch. And a lot of people have told us that, like, this is a lot of fun. Like, it's so funny and it's really cool. So that was kind of the ultimate goal, too.
So you wanted to make a light documentary, not a heavy, sort of message-driven...
There's definitely heavy parts in it because there was a lot going on in the country over that weekend. It's a very specific weekend, 2018 of July. And so you had the internment camps nearby in South Florida for all of the immigrant children. You had the Parkland Massacre happen nearby, the convention as well. That impacted the convention.
Oh.
There's a hurricane about to hit the state at the time. There are other things happening outside that was important to touch on that had a direct effect with the convention as well. And the Parkland was definitely the biggest factor that we touch on in the movie. And I had a lot of people that, every time we show it in theaters that start bawling during that part because it's such a difficult thing to watch and, to talk about again.
Why didn't you say no to this project since you said you're not really a huge documentary fan?
They offered me money.
That's a good reason.
The brothers called me up and said, look, we want to do this project. You're the filmmaker we like and we know. And, we'll hire your crew. We'll put you guys up. We'll pay for the whole thing. And you can come down and kind of build this movie for us. And I was like, sure, of course. I would love to do, I like to do any kind of movie, really. So it was an opportunity and it was already financed. And so I was like, yeah, sounds great. And I'd been to the convention multiple times and they were good friends of mine. And it was only a 4-day shoot. So I was like, we're going to shoot this entire movie in a week. That's great. That's perfect. That's really short. And so we ended up having about 3 months of post editing and then sound mix and score. So maybe about 5 or 6 months of post. But yeah, shooting it was really easy. At least it was fast, shooting it only a few days. So I thought overall it sounded good and I wasn't doing anything that week. So we made it happen.
What was the biggest challenge you faced while filming it?
The biggest challenge I think we faced filming it was just trying to be everywhere at once. It's a massive building and there's 60,000 people and you're pushing and shoving and trying to follow different things. And you would want to break, you're carrying a camera rig around for hours and hours and hours. And there was a couple of times where we're like, okay, I got to grab some food. And I would step out, grab some food and they'd be like, oh, you missed this thing. And it's like, well, of course I missed it because I need to eat a piece of pizza for 10 hours of running around. But I think that was the physical challenges were the most challenging, I think, for us just running around and just worrying that we were going to miss something because it's an in the moment ordeal. And sometimes we'd break away to go shoot an interview or something and then something may happen. But overall, I was never not confident about the movie being there. I thought we had plenty of pieces and plenty of storylines that'll all be fine. I think it was more so just about staying awake and not passing out while holding the camera and catching everything that you possibly could.
And so when you brought the footage back to start piecing it together, did you have an editor or you did it yourself?
I did all the editing myself. And luckily I knew everything because I was there for every single shoot. I was there for every interview and I had lots of notes that I'd written down. Like, I think we should touch on this, I think we should focus on this. So I had kind of a good timeline when we got back of how I was going to cut the movie. We had about 8 terabytes of footage and 16 hours of interviews to go through. Everything was 4K. We shot with 4 different cameras, and then time lapses and stuff. So it just took time, going through everything. And I made individual timelines for each storyline. So it'd be like, all right, they touch on this, drop it in that folder, touch on this, drop it in that folder. So I went through all the footage that we had and organized everything, and then just broke it into little scenes, little chunks, and started cutting it together like that.
And at what point do you show the rough cut to is it the 3 people involved, or are there more people? I did
a pretty good rough cut. I showed it to a couple friends here to get some notes before I showed it to them, some other filmmaking friends, just because I was like, does this make sense? I've been watching this for 10,000 hours. I don't even know what it is anymore. And got some notes based on that, made some tweaks, and then showed them a somewhat, like a decent rough cut. And I had nightmares that Mike was going to show up and like choke me in my sleep, like after watching the movie, because it's definitely a warts and all documentary. Like it shows the best and the worst, I think, of them too. And so they both were like, wow, this is a real movie. And I was like, yeah, that was the plan, was to make a real movie. And I think both of them, it was very difficult for them to watch, just to kind of see this is their entire life story.
Sure.
And we're showcasing their life story, and we're showing them in great moments and compromising moments, essentially. So, but overall, they were really, really happy with it. And then we just, locked picture and did the rest of post and knocked it out, and then did a few festivals. And then and now it's out, streaming everywhere, and Blu-ray and DVD, and it's good to go.
Do you have that talk with people beforehand? That I'm going to shoot things that, you're going to see all sides of you, and you may not like it.
I didn't have that conversation with them because he can be really scary sometimes. But I did tell them look, we're shooting this documentary, but you're still going to get to watch it and have final say. If we do something that's slanderous, like I don't want to slander anybody across the board. We only slander the building because the building caused a huge legal nightmare, which is explained in the documentary. We do slander them, but we don't slander the police. We don't slander the fans or the celebrities or anything like that because we don't need to. It's not that kind of a movie. And I was like, if you watch something where and you're like, we can't have this, let me know and we'll discuss it. But we didn't have anything like that. We didn't run into any problems. And even though some people were like, oh, well, this is a little too one-sided on their behalf. And I'm like, well, I guess it's only one-sided because I didn't interview all the people that caused problems. I didn't interview the kid that got arrested for stealing thousands of dollars worth of badges. I didn't interview the policeman that arrested someone. Like, there's things like that because it's not their story. It's this story. But I think it works out really well, and it balances. You see them in crazy situations, and then you see them having a good time. And so it's like every movie, it's a roller coaster, and it should be.
Sure, but I think it's so much different when it's a narrative, when people, they don't want to see themselves, even if they're having, let's say, a bad hair day or they have bags under their eyes, can you take that out? And you're like, well, no, that shows, that's you right there. I want to show you,
right?
Just a full human being, not only perfect,
And they were totally fine with that. And I think they understood the importance of it all. And it showcases what they go through. They're killing themselves trying to make this thing happen. And it really showcases that. And I think they were appreciative of that. And people that have watched it have told them, like, wow, like, you guys are crazy. And this is amazing that you do all this stuff to make this show happen, to make all of these people happy. And it really opened my eyes to conventions on why conventions are so important and so inclusive. And it's really incredible what they have become. And I really appreciate that now a lot more.